Welcome back to Entrepreneur Country TV. I'm Sarah, your new co-host, and I'm very happy to be here today with Zeb Portanova, the CEO of GEM Opportunity Funds. Hi Zeb, how are you?
I'm great, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Good to
I'm
see you.
very happy to see you too. It's good. So we have a bunch of questions for you today, and I'm very excited to walk you through it, and I'm very excited to learn something about what you actually are doing. You're a very successful venture capitalist. How did you know that you wanted to invest?
Well, that's an interesting question, Sarah. I mean, I guess I've been investing alongside or with my family and some, family resources since I was relatively young, and inquisitive about, where people put money for investment purposes. So it's dated back for a long period of time, and I think maybe what you might be asking is when we started our gem funds, how did we decide what we wanted to invest in, particularly for our investors and our resources we had available. And it was an interesting process. We started off because I was actually a hired gun running a global healthcare company out of Switzerland in Europe.
Mhm.
We had operations pretty much all across the planet on 4 continents. And in the US, there was some specific legislation that got passed in 2018. That was for opportunity zone legislation. And that, for people who are listening to this that are in Europe, may not be familiar with opportunity zones, but in the US, if you're a US taxpayer and you have a capital gain tax, so you buy a stock or a business for $1 and sell it for $5, you've got to pay capital gain tax on that $4 of appreciation. The opportunity zone legislation allowed for the people who had a capital gain tax like that to, first of all, if they invested in an opportunity zone, which is a geographic area,
Mhm.
they could defer paying that tax. Instead of paying it this year, they would pay it roughly in 2027. So you
Oh,
had your own capital available to you for longer.
yeah.
You would have a small reduction in the amount of tax that you would pay. So when we came in, it was a 15% reduction. So you'd also pay less when you did pay in 2027. But the biggest value and advantage for opportunity zone investors is if you hold that investment for a 10-year period, you can exit capital gains tax-free. Now,
Wow.
I'm glancing over a lot of the different pieces for OZ legislation, but when this passed, it was really, really beneficial for me and my family. A lot of my YPO colleagues who either were about to have exits or had exits in their businesses. And it is arguably, if not, I would say it is the most tax advantaged capital gain structure that I will probably ever see in my lifetime. And
Mhm.
so when that passed, we said, well, we want to be using these OZs for the benefits they provide, and also it's impact investing too. So that's very close to my heart.
Mm.
And so we ended up looking at a whole portfolio of different investment opportunities before we focused in on blockchain, cryptocurrency, high tech agriculture, renewable energy. But we looked at a bunch of stuff, and I jokingly say we had to kiss a lot of frogs before we found some princesses, if you will.
That's fascinating. And thinking about this, what would you say was the most important moment of your professional career so far?
Ooh, um, so there's a handful I could think of. I will say joining a group. There's a leadership group. It's a global group called YPO. It stands for Young Presidents Organization.
Mhm.
Um, and and I don't say this lightly. Like I graduated from Harvard, so I've got Harvard alumni connections around the world. I graduated from Duke with an MBA. I've got Duke and the Fuqua School of Business, where I served on their board of directors, the alumni board of directors. Joining YPO has been the single biggest impact I've had in any leadership organization or any business or any strategy set of sessions that I could have ever asked for. And what it is it's, at its core, it's a group of CEOs or chairmen of the board, have to be under 50 years old to join,
Mm.
technically under 45. And we get together in my group of about 7 or 8 people once a month, and they serve as my board of directors in business, in life. We talk about all the good things going on in our lives, all the challenges we're facing in our lives. I actually met with my group yesterday. And so when you're having a business challenge, you go to them, and they're all from different backgrounds. And I've approached them anytime I'm facing a business decision of magnitude. I take it to them, and I am blown away at the ideas and guidance and not just necessarily advice, but experience sharing that has changed my life and helped me become such a better leader, such a better negotiator, such a better person at evaluating strategic decisions and investments. I mean, they think around corners that I can't ever think about. So it's that is, I'd like to say it was a business decision that was the most impactful. It was actually joining this leadership group. It has changed my life for the better, and most folks who have joined, I think I can say the same thing.
Super impressive. That sounds like something we all need and should maybe try to find in our own ways. On the other hand, what is the biggest risk that you would say you've ever taken in your professional life or career?
Oh, I had a really big, I would say 99% of everything I've ever done, either through hard work or luck, or just, dumb luck, if you will, I've been really successful. I had a really, really, really big real estate project blow up in 2008. It was a complete mess. I came in originally as a minority investor. This is 2006 in real estate in Florida. So for everybody who knows the story, right, 2006, 2007, everything was going great. And then, the financial markets collapsed in 2008. I had to step in to try to salvage the project, which I was unable to do. I then spent years in litigation unwinding everything, which I did successfully. But it was a mess. And it was painful. And, at such a young age, I think I was like 31 or 32 at the time, unwinding a massive, at this point, it was like, would have been close to $1 billion project if it was built. I had to unwind that in court. And it was painful. I learned so much from that. I mean, it took a enormous emotional toll on me too, because I'd never really done anything where I'd failed at before. The economic markets were absolutely, it took 10 years for a lot of the recovery to take place, right? But I never failed at anything before. And I certainly had never failed at anything publicly. And I mean, it was, those are my darkest days I've ever experienced on this planet. And, if it weren't for my wife and close friends, I wouldn't have gotten through it. But candidly, like, I can look back on that going, had I not done that, right? Had I not been through all that pain and unwinding, I would never have been able to be a CEO of a large global organization. Like, you need to understand litigation strategy if you want to run a company like that. You need to understand, risk strategy. Like, I can look back and say, hey, here are the areas where I made strategic errors leading up to 2008. And now I will know forever and always, I will not make those same errors ever again.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
and thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. But so going from this project now, how would you get into crypto mining? That's so different. How do you get from A to B in this case?
Yeah. So it all kind of comes back to this YPO organization I was mentioning earlier. So one of my close friends in my YPO group here, living in South Carolina, he made a major investment, and I made a small investment alongside him in a cryptocurrency mining company that he established in 2017. Shortly thereafter, I think within 3 or 4 months, his company was bought by a company now called Core Scientific. They're the largest cryptocurrency mining and data hosting for cryptocurrency mining operation in the world outside of China today. Wow. So they're the largest, they host the largest number of Bitcoin miners in the world outside of China. So Russell and I were involved in this investment in 2017, of which he was really the lead person. He's a tech entrepreneur by background. And he built out his own cryptocurrency operation, data center, got bought by Core Scientific, and now they're the largest in the world outside of China doing this. So we knew about this in its space, I wouldn't say super early on. I mean, other people were investing, in the 2011, 12, 13 in mining operations. We came in significantly later, but Russell's grown to be one of the largest, if not the most experienced in the world in this space. So, and it all came from the fact that I got introduced to him through YPO.
Wow, it's incredible. Very exciting. So you have worked in Switzerland, where Entrepreneur Country is based. You are currently in the US, where you are working right now. How has your perspective on business changed, having worked abroad at such a high level?
It's a good question. There are certainly cultural differences between countries, and there is not. And when I say that, it's not like one is better than the other on any different category or the way you look at it. They're just different, and different's really good. So I mean, one of the things I strive for on the teams that I create and the boards that I create is having diverse opinions on the board and actually encouraging a dissenting opinion to make sure that you're thinking through things appropriately. So as a point of example, this, I don't mean this as a stereotype, but like the folks that I know in the US, they'll work, people, for lack of a better term, that I know, they live to work. Whereas a lot of the Europeans that I was working with, they work to live, right? They will come to work, but when the weekend occurs, right, they really do take that time and unplug and spend it with their families and their friends. And I, for lack of a better term, enjoy life. Not that Americans don't do that, but that was a really eye-opening experience for me living in Switzerland around, like I was reading in advance before moving there that, things like mowing your lawn on a Sunday or even running your vacuum cleaner on a Sunday are really frowned upon because it's Sundays are supposed to be for relaxation and family time.
Yeah, I agree.
So right, this is something that as a European or someone who spent time in Switzerland, everyone's like, yeah, that's right, okay. But as an American, that's like, well, that's when we mow our lawns is on Sunday because we're working Monday through Friday. And again, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a different thing. So coming into Europe and learning to really appreciate the differences between us, because there's a lot of value in taking that perspective. It really made me think twice around, hey, can I find a better way to have balance in my life? So that I can plan ahead, so I can really enjoy the weekends and be mindful for the local customs and traditions that are in place. That stuff was eye-opening, and it carried over. We did a lot of work in Asia, specifically in Vietnam. I was setting up a factory in South Vietnam, and we had a factory in Hanoi, and we were setting up a factory in Ho Chi Minh City, outside of Ho Chi Minh. And even the differences in culture between South Vietnam and North Vietnam were super eye-opening. So I'd say, approaching each culture with an appreciation for their values is tremendously important. And I can't be the one placing my values on them. I can try if I really think there's an area for improvement, but I never walk into a situation trying to say, I'm right, you're wrong. It's more of a, hey, here's what I bring to the table. Here's what you bring to the table. Let's do something together so everybody's better off. That's just, living in Europe helped really reinforce that for me.
That's great. That's amazing. And I totally agree with you on this. It's very interesting to see how the cultural differences impact our work life and how people just work and function differently. But it's very, very, very interesting.
So I'll say this, right? The one thing that has been the most shocking, being heavily involved now in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining operations, is this is a 24/7, 365 business.
Yeah.
A day in crypto, a day in regular business is really 3 days in crypto, because it's a global enterprise. You've got three different 8-hour time zones around the planet that are involved in crypto, and even things like wiring and sending money globally. I mean, I lost a deal in January. We were going to buy a bunch of mining units, and it was a weekend. And Monday happened to be a banking holiday in the US. And so I got the contract to buy these units on a Friday. They said they had to have payment by Monday. I informed them that Monday was a banking holiday, and they said, never mind, we're going to sell it to somebody on Saturday because they're willing to pay in crypto. You don't need a bank open to pay in cryptocurrency. And I just realized, like, oh my gosh, this industry moves faster than I've ever experienced. So again, I have to adapt to what the global situation requires, or I will never be able to be competitive in that space. So
But
that's
so
what we've
would you
done.
say that being active in the crypto industry, is that helping you to have a work-life balance, or does
Oh no,
it
it's
not?
horrible. It's absolutely not. I've never worked harder. There have been days almost 3 times a week, 4 times a week for the last 3 months. I've been waking up at 3 in the morning because I'm thinking about things that need to get done. But the Bitcoin mining is one piece of a number of different large investments that we have. So I've found myself, if I don't start early, I will not be able to get all the things done that we need to get done as a fund and as a team. So my work-life balance is like 0 right now, and it can't stay that way forever. Like it just happens to be right now, as we are at a point where the market is super, super, super hot, and we are so uniquely positioned to be able to buy mining units where the rest of the planet cannot get them. We have to act quickly. I mean, there's times right now, Sarah, like literally, I will get a right of refusal on units, and I'll have to sign the contract and wire funds within 12 hours, or they'll get sold to somebody else.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, I can't afford not to have my phone on.
Yeah.
I normally would wear, so I've got my Apple Watch on my wrist. I'm a Rolex guy too. I love my Rolex, but a Rolex won't send me a text message, buzz me if I miss stuff now. Like if I go golfing and spend 4 hours on the course and miss something, like that could be detrimental for us. It's been wild. It can't last forever, but it's been super exciting.
Let's hope it's temporary. So you are part of one of America's most important business families. Does this put pressure on you, or would you say it has more benefits and advantages?
That is a really good question. So full disclosure, my family founded and worked at Eli Lilly and Company, big pharmaceutical company based in Indiana. For those who are listening who don't know, I'm most well known because they were the first company in the world to ever mass produce insulin for diabetes. They did the production of the Salk polio vaccine, created Prozac, created Cialis. That's kind of an ongoing joke in the family, right? Prozac keeps people happy, and Cialis also keeps people happy. So just different levels of happiness, I suppose. And they may be the first in the world. They've got a phase 2 trial that came out. It could be the first in the world to reduce the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, which obviously the world is rooting for. And honestly, during COVID, they were the first ones to create, rather than go the vaccine route, Lilly decided we're going to create a therapy for people who get sick. And it's been tremendously successful. I've had family members who had to take it, and it's worked great on them and people in nursing homes. So I'm giving you background on all this to say, I grew up in, what's the right word? With a massive amount of reverence for the company. And even though my parents' generation didn't really work there, I grew up learning about the history and always being in awe of what they've been able to do and the people around the world they've been able to help. And so it was about in 2012, I wanted to go learn about that firsthand and go and work in the family business, right? Called family business, but at this point it's publicly traded. Yes, we own shares, but it's publicly traded, and there wasn't a family member working there at the time. So I went in. I've got a different last name. I got to have relative anonymity by going in there, and I really didn't talk about it with people because I wanted to be viewed as first of all, I wanted people to value me on my own merits, as opposed to think if I'm getting special treatment or not special treatment because I'm actually a family member. I will always look back, maybe aside from what I'm doing right now, it was some of my most favorite times ever working. And I don't think there was a day when I didn't walk through the main corporate center hall of Lilly, and and I didn't feel like my body wasn't just like kind of tingling at all that our family had built and created. So that comes a lot of responsibility too, right? I mean, it's stewarding. Not that I was in a position to steward Lilly, but helping steward them in a way, or do my small part to continue to have a positive global impact for patients around the world. Yes, they need to make money, but But if you can really help people and then make money while doing so, I mean, that's like the goal of, is that not the goal of every person?
Yep, I would agree.
Well, most of us at least. But there's been challenges too, right? When in business, people, they just, because they know my family has money, that comes with some challenges. It comes with a lot of people trying to maybe use us for our funds, to get us to invest in things that we don't want to invest in. It can be used to our disadvantage also. So I've learned also to keep a guard up. Not unfavorably, just, it's something I'm always thinking about.
Yeah.
And we do. So I'd say there have been pros and cons. Working at Lilly will always be one of the highlights of my career. And I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I miss working there. Maybe someday I'll go back. I'm having a massive amount of fun building kind of our own, wouldn't call it an empire, but like building our own portfolio of investments.
Yeah.
I won't trade that for anything, but I did love my time at Lilly, and I think super highly of the culture and the people that are there. Yeah.
Very interesting. So as we are talking a little bit about healthcare, how would you say business and life is in the US right now, thinking about COVID?
Well, that's a great question, Sarah. Last night we had President Biden address the country. He laid out a plan. I was able to see parts of it. I read about it this morning. He laid out a plan whereby July 4th of this year, our Independence Day, he wants to have pretty much everybody in the United States who wants a vaccine will be able to have a vaccine administered. I think he actually technically said that should be by the end of May. Look, different parts of the US have reacted very differently to COVID. Some places have had business open. South Carolina has been relatively open. I think Florida has been relatively open. California has been relatively closed.
Yeah.
And part of it was because of death rates, and part of it was because of ICU, hospital, overflowing patient issues and capacity issues. So it's been somewhat regionalized. I think politics had some play in all that stuff too, unfortunately. And I would just say most of my colleagues and I, we've all adapted to a Zoom culture. I've actually become significantly more effective and efficient with my time using Zoom as opposed to having to drive around and travel like I used to.
Yeah.
So that's been really good at a time when we have a lot of great things going on. But I'm optimistic by early summer, like life will pretty much get back to normal for most Americans. Does normal mean you're not going to wear a mask going out? I don't know, and I'm not a mask expert on any of these topics. I just think that if you've got a vaccine and most of the people around you have vaccine or have been exposed and received and actually got COVID, I think we can get back to some sense of normalcy, whatever that is, and business can resume, and people can go out and eat, and they can be around their family, and they can hug their grandchildren and their other family members, and I think that's a really good thing. So I'm very optimistic about the future. A lot of business in the U.S. has actually done really, really well this year, shockingly so. We've propped a lot of that up with government stimulus. I'm optimistic that can continue, but I'm also very long on Bitcoin right now, because anytime you print trillions of dollars, a government prints trillions of dollars, there's going to have to be some currency devaluation. The US dollar has to go down. Inflation has to inevitably come at some point. And unlike the US dollar and the Treasury and the Federal Reserve, you cannot manipulate Bitcoin by printing more of it. It is a very specific algorithm. So I'm long on that, which is why we're heavily invested in the space. But anyway, I'm kind of a rambling answer around where things stand with COVID, but I covered a lot of topics there.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I would like to stick to that optimism of yours. So Julie Meyer, my boss, you invested in her business, Viva Investment Partners, said that you're one of the smartest and one of the most optimistic people she has ever met. Is optimism something that is natural? Is that one of your natural traits?
I think it might be, but I don't know if it's natural or kind of learned over the course of a lifetime. I am naturally optimistic. We have challenges that are thrown at us every single day, and I approach those with what are the solutions whereby we can make this better? And if for every challenge, there's an opportunity. And how do you capitalize on that when, here's a prime example, right? When COVID hit in Asia, the foundries that make silicon chips that go into phones and Bitcoin mining equipment and cars and everything, those foundries got shut down. I mean, the largest ones were Samsung, Taiwanese Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, Simi. The big ones, they had to shut down because COVID was forcing them to shut down. So you had all this supply of silicon that basically stopped. And so here are two different companies that approach that in different ways, right? One was Ford Motor Company, scared about and this came out in their public earnings report, but they were scared about what the future demand was going to be for automobiles. So they stopped buying their supply chain, which included silicon capacity. And other companies like Core Scientific, as an example, and other folks in the Bitcoin mining industry started buying all the futures they could possibly buy for silicon. So now Core has access to machines where nobody else does. And Ford, because they just assumed that when the world came back to normal, they could buy silicon, and they couldn't. They came in and and realized they were going to have to cut their production because they couldn't get access to a critical supply chain raw material component. And so I'm an optimist, right? I look at that and say, this is a situation. Is there a way where I can use it, not necessarily to our advantage, but how is this going to be able to be used for our investors' purposes? And sometimes it would be the choice of Ford, and sometimes it's going to be the choice of Core Scientific. But I just don't have the time or capacity to sit back and worry about the things I can't worry about. I would rather approach it in a way that, how do we solve what's thrown at us? Now, that's not saying everything is going to be rosy and you put your head in the sand. I have one of our advisors and investors who we joke about is, he will think through all the negative things that can happen on every decision, on every investment, on every strategic choice we make. And I love this guy for it, right? Yes. Is it annoying at times? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Sully is so damn good at what he does, and he makes us better. And if we didn't embrace his dissenting opinion, we wouldn't have thought 15 different ways around how this could go wrong or sideways. And so I'd say every team needs one of those, and more than just needs it, needs to embrace it, to encourage it to continue to happen. Because if you don't, then you're just going to get groupthink. So yes, I'm optimistic, but I also embrace the folks. Maybe I'm so optimistic, I want to embrace the folks that are not optimistic.
Maybe we all need a Sully. We all need someone like that. So
if he watches this, he's gonna be like, oh, thanks for bringing me up.
What would you tell the 22-year-old Zeb Portanova today?
I saw that question earlier. I had to think about it for a little while. When I was 22 years old, I really didn't have a clue as to what I wanted to do. I certainly didn't think I'd be running a private equity group of the magnitude that we're running and investing in now. So that wasn't even on my radar. I had things that I was passionate about, and I just naturally continued those passions and that interest until they stopped being of interest. And so, I guess my advice going back is, do what you love. And if you don't love it anymore, then seriously reconsider doing it. Because if you're not having fun, then, and you're not enjoying your work, that's a problem. You need to love, or at least like, what you do and the people you work with. So I wrote a book a couple years ago. I never published it. I wrote it for my daughters, really. And one of the lessons in there, and I walked through a whole bunch of different lessons, right? And things in my experiences in life that I wanted, if I got hit by a beer truck tomorrow, I wanted them to know some things that I thought were really, really valuable in life. And some things were like, what's that?
I would love to read that book.
Well, I only have 2 copies. It's for each one of my daughters. And so, but some of the lessons in there are, winning and losing. So one of the chapter titles is "Winning Isn't Always Winning," right? The fact that you beat somebody or win something. And I use an example. I got to play poker at a table with Warren Buffett a couple of years ago. And it was, I basically, for lack of a better term, won the lottery to be able to do this. I had no idea I was going to be sitting with him.
Mm-hmm.
And people know, if you've ever, searched for some of the charity events, he'll host a lunch, and people bid millions of dollars to sit and have lunch with Warren Buffett.
Mm.
And I got to do it essentially for free.
Wow.
And so we're 15 minutes into playing, and I'm a mediocre poker player at this. I've read one book and I felt like I kind of knew my way around it. But we're playing, and he's bidding very heavily, and I know I have him beat. I with certainty knew that I had a better full house. I assumed he had a full house. I knew I had a better one than he did. And he was bidding into me, and he bid first and I bid second, and I kept raising him, and he was going to go all in. I had more chips than he did. And I turned to the table, and there's about 10 of us, 12 of us at this table. And I said, guys, I'm going to beat Mr. Buffett right now. But if I put him all in the first 15 minutes of this tournament, he's going to get up from the table and leave. And people pay millions and millions of dollars to sit with him for an opportunity to ask questions about investing strategy, raising your family. I mean, he was ours to talk to for as long as he sat at that table. And I was like, I can win right now, but winning isn't really winning if he walks up and gets up, and we can't experience him, and his advice and counsel at the table for the next 90 or 120 minutes.
Wow.
Well, I didn't. So I was like, let's keep him here, please. So sometimes winning isn't always winning. So, I mean, that's some of the advice I will tell my 22-year-old self.
Yeah.
My last piece would be, and I know this is a long-winded answer, it's really important for somebody to work for a terrible boss. Mm-hmm. And that's almost opposite of what you're thinking would be, but I'd say, and I want my daughters to do it. They need to learn what it's like working for somebody who you really, really, really disagree with on, leadership style or ethics or morality or any of that stuff, because you don't know what good is until you've experienced bad. And some of my biggest defining moments have been the places where I've worked for people where I really, really was uncomfortable or didn't like the job for a host of reasons, or didn't feel like I was treated fairly. And that enabled me as a leader to make sure that I wouldn't do that to my people. So, work for a terrible boss.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people would actually go out of their way to recommend that.
I agree with you. So I second it. So about Entrepreneur Country, do you think our stated mission to help, what do you think of it, to help people build their personal economies?
I'll tell you, now more than ever, that is important. In as you and were sharing with me earlier, right? You are like a gig employee, right? You can work from almost anywhere, and COVID has placed us in the situation where people, formal office settings are going to be becoming, fewer and fewer and fewer, and less and less and less important. And there is entrepreneurialism that is happening all across the world, but even inside a large corporation, there are entrepreneurs, there are problem solvers, there are thinkers, right? It doesn't have to be, I've always looked at entrepreneurialism as, you don't technically have to own your own company to be an entrepreneur. You can be working in I could be working at Eli Lilly, Fortune 500 company. And if you're somebody who says, hey, I want to solve problems, like I want to find solutions, right? Everybody can come up with a business idea that creates value for either themselves or their company. I mean, yes. I think it's going to continue to become more and more important. And, it's awesome hearing the great stories. I mean, Julie wrote a book, I was able to read it 2 years ago when she gave it to me. And I remember I was reading every page and I was like, yep. She had an analogy about, it was driving a bus or a car. It was about, the entrepreneur is driving along and they're thrown all these challenges every day, and they're literally navigating through, all the obstacles they're given. And that's so true.
Yeah.
But that's how the global economy works.
Mm-hmm.
So, you wake up every day and you say, I'm passionate about this and I'm going to move this forward. Sure, I might make some money while I'm doing so, but I'm also helping a lot of people, and I'm putting, I'm allowing people to have jobs. And I mean, it's a tremendously impactful opportunity to be an entrepreneur or a leader. And, you guys are promoting that and helping those folks gather together. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your compliment. Thank you very much for your time. It was great speaking to you, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with our whole community.